Hello, everyone. My name is Yinka Freeman. I am an event planner based out of San Diego, California, and I specialize in both in-person and virtual events. Today, I have the pleasure of moderating the Events Are Out, Communities Are In panel, and I'll be joined by Scott Gould as well as Hugh Forrest. Before I introduce Scott and Hugh, I wanted to take a second to talk about why we are all here having this conversation. Communities have been around since the beginning of time. It is part of what makes us human. But today we want to take a look and delve deeper into how events can foster 365 communities and why us as event producers should be working towards year-round engagement. I'd like to remind everyone logged on that this is very much a panel about knowledge sharing. So if you have a burning question, please use the Q&A on the bottom of your screen and ask us any questions. We'll get to it a little bit later on. For today's panel, there is also a word cloud that has been set up for us. That button is on the left of your screen. And in just a few seconds, I will pose the question for the word cloud. The question is, which word comes to mind when you think of community? Which word comes to mind when you think of the word community? We will get to that word cloud in just a little bit later on in the panel. So while you marinate over that question, I'll introduce the two panelists. I'd like to start with Scott. Scott is a former church pastor and is the author of The Shape of Engagement. He works as a consultant and advises organizations on employee, customer, and community engagement. Hello, Scott.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Yinka, for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course, a pleasure. Next, we have Hugh Forrest. Hugh is the Chief Programming Officer at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. He was the first paid employee of South by Southwest, joining the team dinosaurs eons ago in 1989. Welcome, Hugh.
Hi, Yinka. It's great to be here. I'm really honored to be able to lend whatever small expertise I have to this discussion.
Small. I don't think it's going to be small. So when I think of event communities, some of the first names that come to mind is Burning Man. And then I think of larger music festivals like Tomorrowland or Coachella, South by Southwest, which I've actually been to as a support staff to an artist. And I will say, when I was at South by Southwest, one of my most favorite memories was that sense of community. I really felt like people were more of, welcome, you belong here. And who are you? Rather than like, why are you here? Who are you? So it really did create that community the minute you walked into some of those venue spaces. So can you talk about that a little bit? Can you explain how that community has come about with South by Southwest and why it's been so successful?
Absolutely, and I love hearing that story. I'm glad that to hear that you had that experience at South by Southwest. Certainly, that's what we strive for, although don't always achieve. So, I think for South by Southwest, there are two words that are incredibly important to everything we do. One is creativity. We are an event that focuses on and celebrates creativity. The other C word that's extremely important to us is community. Community is the heart of everything we do, or everything we try to do. We are fueled by an incredibly creative community. It is the expertise of that community that keeps us relevant, keeps us exciting, keeps us something that people look forward to coming to. So again, community is very much at the heart of what we do, and we've worked on many different strategies to try to continue to cultivate and to improve and to grow our community. Those range from meetups that we do in Austin or around the US or around the world. We also have something that's going on right now, which is called the South by Southwest Panel Picker, which is where anyone from the community can enter a speaking proposal for the for next year's event. What I particularly like about the panel picker is that flows into another concept that you mentioned in the introduction. It promotes engagement, year-round engagement, where people are getting involved with South by Southwest, 8 months before the event begins, and creating buzz that way. So again, community is incredibly important to what we do, and it is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and therefore excited to be talking about it today.
Great, thank you. Scott, do you have anything to add to what Hugh has said? Do you think that all events should be aspiring to this community type model?
I don't know if all events should be. I don't know if
say that.
I think that we got a whole bunch of assumptions when we begin talking about community and events. First of all, for some people, they just think, let's have a newsletter and we have a community. For other people, this is how many people like us on Instagram, and therefore that's our community. And those are important statistics. I don't necessarily think that they're community. So I don't know. I was a church pastor. Community was my bread and butter. I used to run conferences that really rely on a community. But I think unless you are actually making it a community, calling what you're doing a community, and it's not a community, it's simply an audience, a followership, no, just call it that. call it what it is, rather than trying to make it something that it isn't. So I'm here today because I'm just a little bit concerned about the use of you know what it's like. It's like when you buy a product from a company, and I've had this a few times. It sends you an email saying, thank you, you're now part of our family. And I'm like, no, I am not. You are vastly overstating our relationship right here. So can we actually, can we be clear about what we mean by community? I think Hugh's got some really great stuff to say. So I'm looking forward to digging into that. So I don't want to go off on one just yet.
I do want to go off on one.
Okay, but my sniper is loaded. You know what I mean?
I want to know, Hugh, what is your definition of community? Scott, what is your definition? What to you are some key elements that needs to be in place in order to have a community? And I want to start with you, Scott, since you were already on that train of, you can't just send me a thank you email and say welcome to the family because I am not a part of your family.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize community is a very big word with levels in it. So if I think back to me being a church minister, I had people who were very close members of the community and people who were further out on the community. A community is a group of people generally with some kind of shared purpose, shared cause, shared identity, shared something that keeps them together. And I think the more involved you are in a community, what we're saying by that is the more that you are giving to it, right? So a community is something that actually has a sense of life to it, whereas a followership doesn't necessarily have life to it. An audience doesn't necessarily have life to it. It's not necessarily two-way. I think a community is something that is multi-way. That's something I think is important to recognize. So if we consider that being community, that's really pertinent for some things. But, someone's just mentioned David Spinks's book in the chat on community, the business of belonging, and I agree. But if you've now got people who are going to start going, well, we've run an event, now let's create a Discord forum. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean community. What you might just get there is a whole bunch of people that are really lonely gathering together, and actually you're investing in it, but maybe you're not actually sorting out your community. Maybe what you've got is just now a therapy group. So
it sounds like there needs to be a little bit of intention, maybe not even a little bit, a lot of intention put behind creating a community, rather than just, like you said, throwing up a Discord channel and having everyone who attended the event come and belong to that community.
Oh yeah. I'm sure many people here have been to an event, and the event did feel in that moment like a micro community, certainly. And then afterwards, people will say, it feels like we've got a community here. And then you don't hear from them again for a few months. Then they get back to you and they say, well, we really want to nurture this community. I'm like, I've spoken to no one else here in this group who I attended. No one else has reached out to me individually. And you have the gall to call this a community. I think you can see where I'm coming from, but I need to calm down. So can we switch to Hugh for a second?
Yes, we can. Hugh, please, what is your definition of a community, and what do you think are some elements that need to be incorporated in a community from the get-go?
Well, let me say, I love Scott's passion. I love that he is serving as the devil's advocate for today's discussion, and that is always good to have. I think community, and I hate to agree with Scott on this, but I think community can be completely overused and is such a vague word that it risks losing meaning. But I think as event organizers, what we are really aiming for, if we're aiming for community, is active and engaged communities. And we have to realize that, it's not a Discord. It's not a Discord group. It's not a Facebook group. It is getting in the trenches and working with your so-called community on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Communities need a lot of management. They need a lot of, nutrients to help them grow. They are messy because they don't always agree. They are very challenging, but they are also can be incredibly rewarding when grown sufficiently. And again, that's I think what one of our biggest successes has been at South by Southwest is growing a community. We've certainly had plenty of negative experiences with that community, but outweighed a lot more with positive experiences. And again, the thing that we've done that I think is what really speaks to best practices here is very, very much active engagement, reaching out, talking, communicating, having passionate discussions, robust discussions, active discussions, trying to figure out new ways to get these people involved, as opposed to simply saying you're part of our community because you came to the event, which we have all done occasionally. I know I have, but again, the best communities are ones that are robust and engaged and ongoing and year-round, and that's the gold standard here.
There is a comment in the chat, and I really want to get to this comment. So let me go up and find it really fast. There it is. Okay. To me, community allows for your stakeholders to leave a deeper impact in your company's mission. One-off events shorten your stakeholders' storylines in being a part of your events. I would like to know what both of you think about that statement.
Go for it, Scott.
All right. Well, so this to me makes more sense, but tread with caution, right? I used to be a pastor, so let me bring out a scripture. There's this wonderful passage in the New Testament book of Ephesians, chapter 4, where the Apostle Paul compares a church to a body. And he says, like a body, every joint grows by what every joint supplies. And I think in the same way, a community grows by what everybody is putting into it, right? This is the sense of it's organic and everyone's got something to give. The thing is, and I think a parent knows this, a teacher knows this, a boss knows this, people often don't know what they have to give unless you pull it out of them. Somebody put in the chat that, the verb that goes with community is nurture. That's exactly right? You got to nurture this stuff. You got to pull it out of people. You got to pull that stuff out. When you do, and it synergizes, you get something powerful. This is now fertile, rich soil from which you are able to get beta input on your advice and source speakers and find volunteers. And these people help new people find out about it. But if this becomes an insulated group of people that doesn't change year in, year out, I mean, what we've now got is, like the Dead Sea. It's dead because it lets water in, doesn't let water out. And now it's just going to get really salty. It's going to be like a swamp. And it is a therapy group. I just be frank about it. And I've run these therapy groups. And they start off really great. And then in the end, you're like, oh my word, what have I done here? So I think you've got to keep it moving. You've got to actually even realize that some people are going to be in your community for a little bit, and then they're going to go. And then they might come back, and then they might go again. So your community has to be elastic enough for people to be a part of it and distant, but there's still some sense of they had a meaningful involvement. It wasn't just, I bought a ticket, I went, and that's it. How you do that? Well, the answer to that is you don't just go ahead and find some digital platform and then stick everyone's emails into it, right? It's platform agnostic. In fact, you don't even need a platform. You know what you need is a phone, right? And you chat to people and you email people and you go round one-to-one and you begin connecting people. Now that's something I can get behind if you're going to call it a community. Again, I got to calm. I got to cool down here. Hugh, cool me down.
Hugh.
I hate to be the one agreeing because that's boring, but yeah, I liked from the question, the stakeholder comment. I mean, I think that word is important. And I also like what Scott says about churn in a community being healthy. And certainly that's one of the things that we've seen at South by Southwest is that our community changes every year. They're 50% of the people every year coming to South by Southwest, roughly 50% that are new. And those people are having a very different experience and creating a very different community than the people who've been there for 2 or 3 years. And there have certainly been times where I've been sad, wistful, whatever, that my old friends aren't coming back anymore. But that's balanced out by we're making new friends, we're bringing new people in, and that keeps it healthy. And that doesn't become that therapy group that Scott mentioned, where the the Dead Sea and no new water coming in. It's churn, it's vibrancy, it's passion, it's urgency. All those things characterize a healthy community, and there are many ways to do that. I love the idea of phone, email, face-to-face conversations. Since Scott quoted the Bible, I cannot do anything that impressive. But my favorite quote is from one of my favorite quotes is from a book that came out 15 years ago, not quite as old as the Bible. It was called the Clue Train Manifesto.
Yeah.
It's kind of this Bible for the
it is
new media. And my favorite quote from that book is "Markets are conversations." I love that. Easy to remember and easy to understand. You want to create a market, you want to create a community, have conversations. That is ultimately the key.
I think there's a really important point there, Hugh, that a community is a market as well, that a community is a place. One of the great quotes I heard once was by Daniel Priestley is, don't refine an idea in your mind, refine it in the market, right? And a community is a place where you go and you take your event and you begin to refine it. And I actually think that if you, because some people get nervous about if they're part of our community, should we offer them paid stuff? But I actually think that unless your community can be commercially viable, it's not actually perhaps valuable enough to those people, because that's how we express value as we purchase. So I actually think that seeing your community as a market in some force is actually probably a really healthy thing to do. Obviously not too much, but enough that it makes you go, there's purpose for this community. And people are actually looking for some bang for their buck. They're not just hanging around for the ride, because when that happens again, I think you do lose some of the edge on it.
Absolutely. And I think that, something we talked about before, and I very much believe in, is that your community often understands your event better than you do. and that speaks to what you say about refining your event through your community. I mean, the more you can listen to them, the more you can understand your event. And if you're having to explain your event to them in a way that they don't understand it, as opposed to them explaining it back to you in a way that you understand it, then you probably have something wrong.
I want to talk a little bit. Scott mentioned communities can be platform agnostic. So I want to delve a little bit deeper into that. In the age that we live in currently, where there's a platform for anything and an app for anything, what is a better way to build and engage communities that's more than a Facebook group or a weekly newsletter? How can we build communities where people create on their own? This question is really threefold. How can we build communities that how can we create communities where people create on their own? And is technology necessary for any of that?
Let me start here. I like Scott's thought of agnostic, but again, that hews to his religious background. I'll say it's platform fluid. It can go from one platform to another. In the last year, we all fell in love and fell out of love to some extent with Clubhouse and with other social audio platforms. There'll be something new in the next year that is equally compelling for a while. But again, it's ultimately about making face-to-face, person-to-person connections, whether that is telephone, whether that is in person, whether that is email. Those are all low-tech solutions at this point, but I think they are incredibly viable. Certainly, you want to augment that with whatever is the platform of the day, platform of the moment. But again, if you're relying completely on technology, I think you're getting it wrong. It's organic, it's face-to-face, it's something that is that exists above and beyond technology.
Yeah, I'd really agree with you on that, Hugh. It's, as technologies come in and out, you've got to be fluid. I think that's a far better word than agnostic, which does betray my, yeah, it's a very religious word. Yeah, I think platform fluid is good. I think the mistake that people would make, and I make this mistake, is I want to start a community. Okay, what tool shall I use? And of course, that's the error, right? So my thing would be, to anyone, is if you're starting it, it literally is as easy as just contact every single person that came and start a conversation, however you need to do that.
Hugh, Scott, we could have this conversation for another 5 hours. I cannot believe we are already out of time. So what I would like to do before, I know, right? What I would like to do before we conclude is I do want to bring up that word cloud, that question that was asked in the beginning. Which word comes to mind when you think of community? So if we can have that word cloud come up, then I'd love to see what all came up. Hugh and Scott, I mean, do we just want to exchange phone numbers and just hop off and just get on a call together? I mean,
no, let's do it by Clubhouse.
Let's do it by Clubhouse. Okay, yeah, let's go on Clubhouse after this, after party. Thank you both so very, very, very much for this amazing conversation that we just had. I feel like in the chat, yes, we could continue and go on and on and on and on. So I think one of the key takeaways that we have gotten is communities are messy and you should let them be messy. I think us as planners, we always have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. And when it comes to building a community, you don't necessarily need a plan. Give them the space to grow. So Hugh, Scott, thank you so very much for having this great conversation with us today, and stick around, attendees, for more.
Thanks, Yinka. This was great.
Thank you.
Good.